All right, everybody, welcome back to a special Corona Geek. We're here with Matt Rathbun from Super Robot Jump Jump. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So Matt and I met, you and I met in Pocket Gamer Connect in Vancouver. Did you participate in the big indie pitch?
Actually, I didn't know that was a thing until I got there. They sent me random packets of information, and I guess at some point I had applied to win a free table, and I won that. So I kind of just at last minute realized, I got to go and spend a couple days at this convention, and had no real idea what I was getting into since it was mobile based and my game's PC based, but they were just doing an indie expo. So.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because we just got back from Casual Connect in San Francisco, and we focus a lot on mobile around here as well, and I thought that there was going to be a lot more mobile applications to kind of competing in that indie prize, and it was a lot of desktop stuff.
Yeah, I think that I guess there's a decent mobile market in Vancouver, but a lot of the studios are kind of conquering that. So most of the indies I know are actually focusing on VR nowadays. They're kind of shifting away from the easier mobile titles because you can actually do relatively decent today with a quickly produced VR title instead, since that's the new kind of shiny new toy.
Yeah. And so those would be straight up sales of the apps, right? I mean, there's no real way to monetize VR other than...
Yeah, no in-app purchases yet, although I'm sure it won't take too long.
Yeah, I would imagine those would come as DLCs or something, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, some sort of content package or something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay, so you're based in Vancouver, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, and so why did you pick Steam? So I mean, if on that vein of mobile versus desktop, why did you pick desktop?
Well, for me, I actually don't really play any mobile games. I'm a huge gamer, but I play a lot of competitive games. So I'm very, very high rated in pretty much all of the big competitive titles. StarCraft, League of Legends, new one, Overwatch, everything. I play them all at a really high competitive level. So computer games have always been my forte. And so I figure if I'm going to build video games, I might as well create what I know really well and personally enjoy. So actually, I think my game, if anything, came out too difficult because I love these insane challenges. And actually, even to this day, I have yet to watch a full run of anybody completing the game on hard, other than myself. It's my personal niche of preference.
Okay, so Super Robot Jump Jump. I played that in Vancouver, and I couldn't get very far. It's a platformer / puzzler game, right?
Yeah, very heavily platformer, and I think frustration platformer is the key because death is imminent. Like there's a little death counter for a reason. You will be dying, and you will be dying a lot.
I did get that feel that you had, that as you designed the things, you sometimes I think designers try to make it progressively harder as you go, but it seemed like you were purposely putting in extra spikes because that was going to make it even harder to get through the level.
Yeah, the difficulty curve is very sharp. The first 10 to 20 levels are kind of all right, and then it just ramps like insanely quickly. There's an easy mode that's got a little more passive curve to it where a lot of the traps have been removed, but I actually didn't plan to have that in the game from the beginning, so that was kind of an afterthought when I realized it was just so ludicrously difficult that most people would not be enjoying it. So I kind of added a secondary mode that's a lot better for the regular player, but yeah, it's very tough.
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is I know you're an indie developer, and I wanted to talk about your experience as an indie developer and lessons learned and where you want to go from here. So let's talk just a few minutes about your background in particular. Did you have previous experience in designing games and programming?
No, actually, when I was a kid, I got addicted to video games, and it's been that way ever since. My mom took my Nintendo away when I was like 3 years old, and that was kind of the beginning of it all. And I actually tried to avoid game development for most of my life because I've heard all the horror stories of working at EA and these crazy crunch times and how poorly your pay is comparatively to other programmers. And so I actually went and have had a wacky life of trying a lot of different careers in an attempt to not end up going down this road. So it was when I was working for a company as a video producer, and I was working in the film industry, and I've been in the military, and I've done lots of different things, trying out different career paths. And finally, I was just tinkering around with this game as a fun little thing at home because I wanted to see if I could, make a block move on the screen. So when I started the game, it was actually the entire reason it's a robot is because I tried to draw a person and I accidentally held shift in Photoshop and just drew a block instead. And I went, yeah, good enough, and left that as my prototype. And it became a game about a robot. And so it just started off with this really rudimentary, clunky platforming mechanics that I built just to see how it worked. And it just slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then a year later, full PC release.
Is there any reason why you didn't go mobile, mobile versus desktop?
Just because the control scheme on mobile is not one I really typically enjoy. I think mobile suits itself really well to games like Clash of Clans or Clash Royale, where all you're really doing is making decisions. You're not really interacting with the game very much, as opposed to PC games where it's all about your reaction times and interactions. So I think it's just a really different concept, and especially at the difficulty level of this game, there's no way that the mobile controls would suit it.
Okay, so you wanted to make sure that the platform dictated that you'd have a controller in your hand.
Basically, yeah. I was very, very particular about building it so that it would function on keyboard or controller. I remember playing Super Meat Boy, and on keyboard it just felt really like garbage. So I've been very, very particular about every game I build feeling smooth on all control options. And since if I was building for a console, obviously I would just aim for a controller. But because PC may not have a controller, I make sure that I spend a lot of time to make sure that the controls are smooth, regardless of wherever you want to play.
Okay. Well, let's talk about team members. I noticed on superrobotjumpjob.com that there was a listing there that showed your team members, and you've got Sebastian Wagner does art, Benedict Nichols does sound. So how was that working with the team? Did you kind of hire those guys on, or did they volunteer for the project, or how did that work?
It was a little bit different with both of them. I didn't get sound included until we were a decent chunk into the game. And what I did is I prototyped the entire game first myself, and I drew all the art and did all the animation, and it was fairly rough. And so I realized that I needed an artist if I wanted to bring the polish level up to an acceptable level. So I went looking, and I hired Sebastian for some short-term, just basically reskinning all of my assets. And he really loved the project, so he actually asked to buy in, I suppose, to a degree. So he wanted to join us, so we did a revenue share deal with him. And so he and I ended up splitting portions of the project, and then he basically continued to do the skinning. So he wasn't exactly an art director, although he did end up taking a bit of that role on. It was still mostly me doing all the design work and drawing up all the assets originally, and then he would reskin them and make them animated and look much better and a lot smoother. So he did a lot of the reworking on the art there. Ben was just straight up, we had just hired him as a composer, and we worked together for a couple of months building out the soundtrack, trying to find kind of an interesting set of sounds. If you haven't played through the whole game, every world has a very, very distinct soundtrack to it. So we managed to flush that out and make sure we had enough music. And Ben did a fantastic job. But working with a team in an indie game, I think it's really important to cover the frustration aspect as well, because people, no matter how great and how talented they are, you're always going to run into speed bumps. I think with Ben, we were maybe 2.5 months behind schedule on the audio, for example. So that's like one huge hurdle that you have to try to roll with those punches and be ready for, different delays, different issues, different aspects like that. Sebastian also got a job. He was working as a freelance artist when I hired him. He ended up getting a job at Daedalic Studios in Germany. So that obviously took up a significant portion of his time. He went from having all day, every day to be able to work to now he has this full 60-hour-a-week job when he got hired right in the middle of crunch time. So there's a lot of bumps in the road down along the way of game development. And it's one of those things where if I may just take a second to give advice to hopeful indie developers, you really have to grit your teeth and just keep working through it. Everybody's going to run into points in time where they can very easily say, I give up, this is too much. And the only people who are going to finish games are the ones who kind of go past that, because there's always an excuse to stop.
Yeah, and it sounds like that you didn't necessarily do anything wrong there. I mean, you engaged somebody that had plenty of time, and then their situation changed, and that, of course, changed your situation, which was unforeseen. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's and that seems to be a very common trend, especially with indies, because we aren't heavily funded. If you have lots of money, it's very easy to keep people engaged and working for you full time, because that now supplies their means. Because most indies end up working on some sort of revenue share deal, even the second project that we have in the works now, Phase, has run into just countless issues. because my artistic partner on that project as well is running into, I guess, some real life issues where he's got some things coming up, and new things have popped up as we've gone down the road, and we've actually had to completely put the project on hold temporarily. So there's always just lots of life getting in the way until you're ready to say have your own studio and spend all your time there and legitimately get full-blown funding, which is very difficult to get off the ground for most indies.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I watched the other day this interview of John Romero for one of these computer history, museum kind of things, and he was saying, they asked him the question, how is it to working with team members? Should you onboard somebody? Should you give them a piece of the company? That sort of thing. And his advice was just straight out, just pay the talent, right? Yeah. And kind of retain as much ownership of the thing as you can, and pay people for doing good work. And so it's just.
I'd absolutely agree with that advice. If you have any possibility to do so, please just retain your ownership and pay the talent. It is such an easier deal, especially with revenue share. One concept people don't consider is now once the game launches, you're now perpetually responsible for paying out royalties and things like that. Like somebody's going to be the one in charge. So there needs to be a business person involved, and someone's got to take that responsibility on their shoulders. So when you make a partnership, most of the time, somebody's maybe good at programming, somebody's good at art, but they never stop to consider that business is actually a complete third of the project as well. And if anybody starts taking a little bit more of that responsibility on, they'll end up taking all of that responsibility on. So you want to make sure when you make deals, if you don't have the funding, you end up having to make revenue share deals. There's no problem with that. But make sure you always consider the business aspect, because it is massive. And often very much overlooked in indie development.
Okay. Let's talk briefly about the marketing efforts. I know you have a website, you have a press kit. You seem to kind of cover some of the bases as far as having videos and images and text that media sources could use. What sort of marketing did you do?
I actually spent the entire month pre-release just trying to do 100%, 8 hours a day of marketing efforts. And I'm going to be really frank and honest with this one. I'm very, very jaded with the entire concept of marketing, because I'm obviously not a marketer by trade. I felt like I had a decent hang of how to approach it. And the issue is, as an indie game, unless you're doing something that's already grabbing huge attention, like I've seen some indie titles that just get massive easy marketing just based off the fact that their game has a really beautiful aesthetic, or it's doing something really weird and that kind of draws the attention. You kind of need that hook. And my game is a platformer, and I think it looks great and it plays fun, and the general feedback has been really positive about the game. People seem to really enjoy it. We didn't have some crazy new concept. We didn't bend time. We didn't have some wacky thing to kind of hook people in, and that made marketing really challenging. So for the most part, I'd say probably 95% of my marketing efforts were entirely ignored. You can send emails all day and you'll be lucky to get a single reply or a single YouTuber throwing it up there. Most of the time, what you'll end up getting as an indie developer is people with YouTube channels with 3 subscribers and 4 views wanting a free copy of your game to help you market. And that really, in all honesty, at the end of the day, does legitimately nothing. I'll say that the most effective thing that I have is a friend of mine that I went to high school with ended up moving to California, and he works for CLG, the Professional League of Legends team. And so I gave him some keys and he gave them to the guys, and they ended up playing and starting little challenges, because pro gamers taking on a really hard game, they were loving it. So they started betting each other money on who could beat it first, and it got really exciting in the house. And so he'd always feed me updates, and they ended up streaming the game a little bit. And that was probably 10 times more effective than spending a whole month of emailing people. So it's really about your connections, and being able to get that one in is probably the most helpful thing. And other than that, the other indie developers that I'm friends with we've all discussed marketing to an absolutely crazy in-depth level. And there's a lot of luck involved, I'm going to be honest. I remember a good friend of mine, Daniel Mullins, made Pony Island, and Pony Island has done very well for itself. And he said that he just woke up one day with an email from PewDiePie. He hadn't even reached out. PewDiePie had found his game because of some system. He still said he has no idea how. And PewDiePie making a video for your game is obviously the best marketing, I think, that's possible to get today.
That's it seems to be the benefit that a lot of developers get when they go with a publisher. There's good and bads about any kind of publisher, whether you're a book publisher or a book author or a game developer or whatever. But having that established funnel, established distribution channel, seems to be a real big benefit.
Yeah, Total Biscuit's done some really great videos on marketing. And basically, one of the common themes that comes up is he says, oh, this publisher contacted me. And every time they've contacted me with a game, I've actually ended up making a video about it because they've always sent me really good games. Or I recognize this name. And like it or not, but the world of marketing is all connections. So whoever you can personally get to look at your thing. So as a self-published indie with no backing and no story behind you, you have no connections. You're going to have a very, very difficult struggle to get that marketing out there.
Interesting. So let's talk about some of the things that that you would do differently.
Okay. Well, for me, the game started off as a learn how to build video games concept. I didn't know how to make games at all. I had a mild programming background in web development, but very, very little. Like I basically didn't know how to make games to any degree. So that part I would keep exactly the same because I think it was great and it taught me so much. And today I can, build pretty much anything, and that's a huge change. I'm really glad that I taught myself all those skills. I would definitely have probably planned out the game itself differently. I think that the lack of that specific hook, I wanted a game that I wanted to play, and I didn't care about some weird hook, but I didn't realize how difficult marketing is without that. I would absolutely have planned out to have a huge hook. And the shift you can see from my first project to my second project, I think is a pretty big tell already. The art takes a very different direction. We're doing something much more artistic. We have a huge hook. The whole concept of phase is that you can shift phases in the middle of combat. So it's kind of got this like Dark Souls 3-dimensional procedurally generated world feel. Well, you can also have this shifting mechanic. So it's really easy to say phase is about phasing. Everyone goes, oh, I get that. And so we've shifted that up as well. I would have definitely made a different name. That's probably the first one. Super Robot Jump Jump is not the greatest game name ever. My friends have jokingly banned me from naming things for the rest of time after a few other horrible names I've come up with. So that's a big, big shift I would make. But in all honesty, it was a really crazy, wild ride. I was trying everything I could to get one game out on the market to prove I could do this. I was sleeping on a couch. I was trying to just trim down life to every degree to keep costs low so that I could continue paying other people for their services. I'm really proud of the fact that I got all that together and got it out. And so in a sense, there's different things I would do because you learn lessons to make a game better. But for your first title, I think I'm really proud of what I've managed to produce.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I wish you all the luck, and I want to encourage everybody to go over to superrobotjumpjump.com and check it out. It's available on Steam. Is there anything they need to know when they're on Steam?
Not really. Just it's probably going to be a little bit frustrating. If you have any problems, feel free to send me a message. I'm always on the community forums there, and yeah, give it a shot. It's you've been warned. You know what you're getting into. If it's not your style of game, please don't grab a copy. But if you think it might be fun, give it a shot. Or if you want to torture a friend, have them play with you. It's co-op. So.
Oh, very, very nice. All right. Well, Matt, I sure appreciate your time, and I wish you all the luck.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's really, great talking to you again.